Many people will say I'm crazy for switching from PlayStation to Xbox back in 2007. Halo was the reason why I wanted to switch since so many friends and cousins of mine had the game. I received an Xbox 360 and Halo 3 for my birthday that year, and much time was spent playing Halo, but not too long after my birthday, I discovered another game that also recently came out, Gears of War. I fell in love with that game instantly, so my Xbox journey began with stellar games in Halo 3 and the first Gears of War. I am officially starting a series or playlist, whatever you want to call it, for nostalgia commentary. I love looking back on and reflecting on games, movies, and shows that I loved in the past, and I am officially launching this series today with a video on the Gears of War franchise. So, grab your Lancer and your Gnasher, and let's hop into King Raven and get this party started. Gears of War was created by Epic Games, a company that does truly live by its name. Sadly, I think way down the line in the future, people are going to remember Epic more for Fortnite, and that's fair. That game is amazing and continues to stand the test of time as it continues to evolve over the years. But man, I plan on telling my kids one day about how great the Gears of War franchise was. Now, the story of Gears of War is a dark and gritty one. It features great writing and characters. The commentary from characters both in-game and in cutscenes is very memorable. The heroes of Delta Squad are awesome. You have Marcus Phoenix, Dom Santiago, Damon Baird, and Augustus Cole, all memorable in their own ways with great personalities that are unique to one another, and they just make up a perfect squad. And this is one of the games that is a great example of why silent protagonists are not always the way to go in games. Now, Gears of War never really did much in the graphics department, not that the graphics were bad, but the dark color palette did make sense for the type of game that it was. The story and the lore of Gears of War was very unique and interesting too. The games take place on the planet Sera, which is similar to Earth, and humanity does what it does best, fight each other and use up all the resources. And as the fossil fuels and nuclear fuels began to run dry, scientists ended up discovering emulsion, which was life-saving essentially. It's a naturally occurring resource that can be turned into an energy source. So the emulsion ended the energy crisis on the planet, but it did lead to economic disparity, and then the wars came. The people of Sera would go on to fight for 79 years in the Pendulum Wars. Eventually, the two warring factions, the Coalition of Ordered Governments and the Union of Independent Republics, agreed to peace. And of course, conveniently, just a few weeks after the peace treaty was signed, the Locusts emerged from the ground and attacked all the big cities. 25% of the population on Sera was killed on just the first day of fighting alone. The Locusts, or Grubs as they are commonly referred to in the series, are an awesome enemy to fight. They are not to be taken lightly. They are aggressive, they won't just sit behind cover and wait for you to get to them. They will charge at you at some point, and they will look to flank you. Grubs is a fitting nickname for them since they literally come from the ground. They're almost like ants. Their home is a network of tunnels. They burrow in and out of the ground through holes called emergence holes, and those could pop up anywhere at times for ambushes or reinforcements. And there's a nice variety of enemy design too. You have some different designs of basic soldiers that use a variety of weapons, but then you have the specialty enemies, as I like to refer to them as. You know, boomers are huge, they're bullet sponges, but they also use deadly weapons that cause big damage like the boom shot for explosive damage, or flamethrowers. You have Cantus enemies that like to heal their comrades. You have berserkers who are big, blind, and deadly. They don't show up often, but those few moments throughout the games where you have to fight them, they're very intense and memorable, and you have to try to avoid their violent charges and kill them in tough ways. You also have maulers and butchers who like to use cleavers, flails, and shields. Beast Riders ride or fly in using different mounts, which are basically the Locust version of vehicles. Grinders use miniguns, and then you got the sharp-shooting Grubs who stay in the back and use snipers. I think you get my point. There's honestly like 42 different types of enemies in the game, and every battle honestly is intense and a lot of fun to play through. The combat scenarios are awesome in all the games, and I think those combat scenarios are a big reason why these games are very easy to replay. I can't count how many times that I replayed the games in this franchise. Most games that have similar vibes to Gears of War feature enemies that are basically like aliens or zombies. The Locusts, I thought, had a very unique origin story. The Locusts, despite their appearance, are actually genetically altered humans. Experiments were done on them during the wars, and the emulsion ended up mutating miners and their families. The emulsion also created new problems for the Locusts later in the series. That's mostly explored in the third game. And again, the Locusts were a unique enemy due to their origin story and their combat style and variety. Third-person games are tough to get right when it comes to controls. Some games struggle to avoid clunkiness when it comes to moving around, ducking for cover, and of course aiming and shooting. Gears of War did all that right, and then some. I love when third-person games implement a cover system. Gears did it so well, and the character movement did feel a little stiff at times, especially in the first game, but by the time we got to the third game, things felt smoother. I also have no complaints with Gears 4 or 5 as well, especially with things being smoother and running nicely in the current gaming generation. But Gears also had great level design that helped with the movement and cover system. You could duck behind a wall and scan the area in front of you and strategize. Will you sit here and trade shots back and forth, or will you flank around the side or charge up and use your Gnasher or Lancer? And now would be a good time to talk about the weapons. There's two weapons that define Gears of War, and they are literally base weapons. The Lancer is an amazing assault rifle that features a chainsaw. If you find yourself with locusts in your face, you just rev up that chainsaw and turn them into minced meat. My favorite was just holding down B to rev up the saw and then just running towards enemies. And then in later games, they added a feature where you could clash with enemies who also use the chainsaw, and you can get in a chainsaw battle where you have to mash the button to beat them. It's actually scary and intense when enemies run towards you because they will try to return the favor and chop you up, or they may blow you to bits with the Gnasher shotgun. So the Lancer and the Gnasher offer great close quarters combat, and it's also fun honestly to pop locust heads off with sniper rifles, swing cleavers, or turn a boom shot against them. I did not spend a ton of time playing multiplayer. I had nothing against it. I guess that's where Call of Duty and Halo had the advantage, was in the multiplayer department. I did play quite a bit of Horde mode, which I will talk about in a moment. But I do think the multiplayer was fun from what I played. Map design was awesome. It did seem like they considered the game modes and weapons when making these maps. Modes that featured attack and defend objectives had areas that were designed for that objective. There was a mode, perhaps my favorite mode in multiplayer, was where each team had a leader that they had to defend while trying to kill the opposing team's leader. It was called Assassination in the first game, and I think it changed names a couple of times in later games. But what was nice about the maps is that there were good areas where the leaders could hide and your teammates could post up with you in a building. You can also plant grenades on the walls so when the enemies run by, they blow up. And maps featured tight spots where things would get intense, just like in the campaign. A lot of chainsawing was going on, and that Gnasher was literally the meta weapon in the game. People were always running around with that thing. And Gears multiplayer was popular. Competitive multiplayer, I read, ended up starting off early actually in Major League Gaming events way back in the beginning in 2007. Esports support actually just ended in the summer of 2022 as Coalition, the company currently running the franchise, looks to work on other projects, maybe Gears 6? So this is definitely sad for big fans of Gears multiplayer, but it is also impressive to see the franchise hold its own in the multiplayer shooter space that also features games like Halo, Call of Duty, and Battlefield. And I can't forget Horde mode, which was introduced in Gears 2. I probably spent more time playing Horde than multiplayer. Fighting waves of locusts never got old, and this was a perfect co-op mode to continue that. There were 50 total waves that you had to complete, and it progressively got harder. It kind of reminded me of old school Call of Duty Zombies in terms of strategy. You would eventually figure out the perfect hiding spot to post up at and defend yourself for dear life. This franchise has been around for a long time, and each installment continued to build upon the success of the franchise. Like I said, Gears 2 brings in Horde mode. Gears 3 added Beast mode, which allowed you to play as the Locust and take on human enemies. Gears 3 even introduced Horde 2.0, which added more to the gameplay of Horde mode. You can earn currency to use to build defenses like barriers and turrets. You could buy weapons and ammo. And actually, it's cool to see a developer acknowledge the way the gamers play the game mode. They recognized how players would pick a spot on the map and defend that area, and when the game came out with Horde 2.0, they allowed you to continue this gameplay by providing you with the resources to actually build a command center and build defenses for that position, thus making the mode even more strategic and tactical. So I'll admit most of my commentary in this video is focusing on the first 3 games, but honestly I enjoyed the 4th and 5th games as well. It's tough to sell old fans like myself on new stories and characters after the good old days. Halo is a perfect example of a franchise that has struggled to do this ever since 343 took charge and made Halo 4, 5, and Infinite. But I did enjoy the stories in the 4th and 5th games, even if they didn't feel as good as the Holy Trilogy. But it is also nice to see the old characters pop in as well. Modern day Gears is awesome. Better graphics and smoother controls can keep this series alive and well for a long time going forward. Next-gen gaming was sprinkled into Gears 5 with different types of combat scenarios, a small open-world section in the campaign, and even that one crucial moment at the end of the campaign where you literally had to choose which character to save while sacrificing the other. You never got to make decisions like this in any other game before. I know there's a lot of people that had issues with Gears of War Judgment. Personally, I liked the game. It offered 2 more campaigns. You got to play as Baird, the addition of a couple new characters, you had new weapons. Then there was a game called Gears Pop, which was a mobile game for a short time that came out in 2019, and it did find itself shut down in 2021. It was an RTS game where characters looked like Funko Pops. Honestly, I never played it, so I really can't say much on it. And then you had Gears Tactics, which is another legitimate RTS game that came out a few years ago. This one went back to the actual tone and setting of the Gears of War franchise. And I'll admit, this one I still need to play as well, but I am a big fan of RTS games, so maybe I will actually go pick it up after making this review. So there's not much known yet about Gears 6, but there's speculation that Gears 6 is the next project the Coalition will be working on after a few other projects were recently canceled. Gears 5 came out back in September of 2019, so a release window for Gears 6 should make sense for sometime within the next few years, honestly. Gears of War was and still is one of my favorite video game franchises of all time. It's one of the few longtime franchises that tries to stay true to its original identity. It's also kind of sad that Microsoft can't make new franchises that are similar to Gears or even old school Halo, and personally I think Microsoft can do a lot more to promote this series and keep it alive since there is a legitimate Xbox fan base that loves Gears of War, but maybe that's a video for another day. If you played the Gears franchise, then tell me your thoughts on it down below in the comment section. Also, I can be found on Twitter and TikTok at analyzethis_YT. Thanks for watching and take care.